AI is the most disruptive technology that we've seen in our careers, and it's heralding a whole new future for talent acquisition. Most of the discussion in the industry around AI is about use cases and what the future might look like. But it's really important that we understand how the technology works. What are the implications for the way we design software? What about the way we interface with recruiting systems? What are the legal issues? How do we adapt our processes to really make AI work and get its true value? And also, how do we educate and move our teams forward to really adopt this new technology in a way that really works? The most important thing to me in all of this is transparency. SmartRecruiters recently launched Winston, a recruiting platform that's been built AI first from the bottom up. And I'm delighted that they agree transparency is just as important to them as it is to me. In this series of 4 interviews, we're going to be talking to the people who built Winston and continue to evolve it. So, as you, as talent acquisition professionals, can learn the lessons that they've learned to superpower your AI transformation. Hi, Thibaut. It is fantastic to be talking with you. To start with, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, and what a privacy and AI analyst does in Smart Recruiters.
Hello, Matt. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor. Um, I work at SmartRecruiters since 3 years, but it's a bit tricky for the classic way to work and to learn because I followed my Master of Digital Law at Paris University at the Sorbonne, um, while also working for SmartRecruiters. So 2, 3 days a week, I was studying or working for SmartRecruiters. So I achieved my master last year, and it's been 1 year that I work full time at SmartRecruiters. And my position of privacy and AI analyst is consisting in, first of all, assessing the regulatory impact on the SmartRecruiters product, also to ease the sales process and to transform the law and the compliance into a competitive advantage and into also sales deliverables. So a lot of my work also is containing the creation and drafting of deliverables to listen to the expectations of the market and to transform a legal requirement into a strongness. And also, finally, to foster a culture of trust and transparency as marketers.
Absolutely. And, it's an important job because there is just so much confusion about AI and regulation and ethics and all those kind of things. As a kind of bit of context, just tell us a little bit about the current regulatory landscape for AI and recruiting.
Yeah. So the first real AI law that was published, especially in hiring, was not the EU Act, as we could think. It was more the New York City law, a local law, number 144, that was concerning automated employment decision tools, and that is still requiring tech providers, especially in hiring, to realize a bias audit, algorithmic bias audit, each year by an independent third-party auditor, and to realize discrimination reports based on the US methodology of the EEOC. So this was the first. New York paved the way on this. After this, obviously, you have the EU Act that was also a big piece of the AI regulation, and that is inspiring also other countries. The EU Act is based on risk classification. So you have unacceptable risk, high risk AI systems, and so on. For example, South Korea on December 26th adopted also an AI act that was largely inspired by the EUA Act. And it is the same also for the Colorado state, because in the US, there is no federal law in AI, despite there is some efforts into doing this. But for now, the US states are having the autonomy on this. And also the EUA Act inspired drafts because we have to also follow the laws that are passing or not. And for example, in Canada or in Brazil, there were some AI drafts that did not pass due to government blocking and so on. Um, but yes, long story short, we have some laws in the US at the state level, the EU as a centralized level, Asia that is taking more freedom. Some countries are following the European way, some are just creating their own based more on innovation and they are more flexible. Example of Singapore, Japan. And after you have the very specific case of China. And China is more protecting the state's interest and is also really careful about the impact of AI that can have on the Chinese public.
I mean, it sounds just so complicated, basically. I think there's a couple of things that I really want to sort of dig into a bit deeper there. Let's talk about I suppose, the ambiguity around this. So you kind of mentioned sort of a couple of countries that have draft legislation that didn't happen. I know that the UK is working on something at the moment. It seems to be working on something for quite some time, but it's working on something at the moment. How do you deal with that kind of ambiguity, but also sort of likely future developments? I mean, how do you prepare for regulations that don't actually exist yet?
Yeah, so first of all, I have to follow the legal news. Hopefully, the AI compliance tiny world is really helping each other. So we have our own influencers that are publishing and some news, etc. So, for example, just this morning, Italy passed a new AI law to implement the EU AI Act. So I could not have this information without other colleagues that are not working in the same company. Also, we are setting up some news. I am probably maybe the only one that is subscribed to the Australian Parliament newsletter. And also we have at SmartRecruiters, we are subscribed also to a very helpful tool that is called Data Guidance. It's a feature of OneTrust, and it's basically centralizing all the legal news across the world. And they have one special lawyer per country, so we can keep track of jurisdictions that we are interested in or not.
And it's obviously a global company and a global product, and there's obviously some similarities there, but there are geographies and countries who are going off in a completely different direction. How does that complicate product development? I mean, how do you deal with that sort of aspect of it? Different rules and regulations in different places.
Yeah. So first of all, to develop the product, we need a roadmap. And so the battle is on the roadmap to identify and anticipate new requirements that could arrive and balancing this with the roadmap and the needs of the engineers, the products, and so on. The innovation will always come first, and the lawyers will always be late. And it is the lesson of the whole history of the law. And so, first of all, you have to identify trends and also movements of the courts. For example, if you see that the Court of Justice is going in that way, and sometimes a local court in the US is joining this position, or you can see also the news and the actualities of the authorities. For example, the Authority of California is really joining some European positions, some not. So first of all, you have to stick to the roadmap. After, you have to identify the priorities of your customers, of your prospects, when you see coming questions in the RFPs. For me, the RFPs are also a very good tool to understand what are the companies needing for and what is their expectations. And by combining this, let's say, breaking news aspects with listening to the market with the RFP, comparing also different products or discussing with colleagues, you can have a certain idea of what you should put at the next quarter.
And I suppose that looking at the kind of the actual regulations themselves, what are the high risk areas when it sort of comes to hiring at the moment? What are the real things that everyone needs to keep an eye on?
Mm. So the first high risk classification was created by Brussels, by the EUA Act. It's the first law that is introducing this. Now we have this also in South Korea and in Colorado, and also in Texas. And for EU, Colorado, and South Korea, they have set a very specific list of use cases of AI. They are the use cases that are not banned from the society. And we see the concern of this most Western oriented mind placed on the fear of social credit score, for example. So outside of hiring, having banking credit loan systems would be high risk for all of these countries. Having the idea of an AI that could reject without a pair of human eyes your loan is a fear that is deeply felt in these countries and in these continents. More specific on hiring, lawfully and legally, it is considered that applying to a job is an important part of your life, an important moment. And we all knew when we obtained a new job and we started a new job, it was a new chapter of our life. And this is the same. And the governments are not willing to have a fully automated process where just machines are giving jobs to humans. So high risk is not banned, but it's under condition.
And I think one of the one of the most interesting things to me when I sort of looked at that New York state law, which seemed to be the sort of the first one that came out, and I think this is true in the EU as well. You can tell me whether I'm right or not. Is kind of where the liability for this lies. So it's not just with the software provider; it's with the end user, the employer as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, we are in a gray zone for the responsibility, and this is, in my opinion, the debate of the next 5 years, the liability of the tech providers and of the AI providers. So now providers is a legal term under the EU AI Act, Colorado AI Act. You are the provider of a technology, and so you are starting to be considered as a provider of a car. Now AI and software in the trend, and we come back to the trend because actually there is no, except in the EU, we don't have a international standard on this. But actually, providing an AI or software is like providing a car, and so you have to respect some norms, how the door is working and how the window is going, to also avoid any harmful outcome to the user.
Yeah, that's a really interesting analogy there. And then the user is effectively driving the car, so they're subject to kind of regulations as well. Moving on from the kind of the regulations themselves, you mentioned, right at the start that a big bit of your job was to really kind of translate this into, design and development of the products and all that sort of stuff. How do you work with that aspect of the business to make sure that things are, things are compliant, but also, to make sure the product is being built in a way that kind of really meets the needs in the market?
First of all, you have to create a relationship with your engineers and your product team. You have to be included in the first ideas. And when the idea is going serious, then you have to loop in your compliance team to do in one shot the perfect job. And so you don't have to do further developments to rectify some mistakes that you have to make after. That is making losing effort, times, money to all the stakeholders. So when the idea is going really serious, after we are working, for example, with product requirement documents. And so every team is working on, I need from this product, this feature, this outcome. And so as another team, the compliance is doing so. After we have to keep track on the events, we have to dig more deeper after to understand which data will be processed, what documentation are we building, which features do we need to implement, what is the risk, what should we prioritize, and after to embed this compliance in the UX. And now compliance is more and more getting to the UX. And for example, the Article 50 of EUA Act requires you to label AI generated stuff. So if you interact with a chatbot, you have already the right to request an information that you are actually interacting with an AI.
And Regulation compliance, they're only sort of part of the overall picture here. What about ethics? How does Smart Recruiters deal with the ethics of using AI in hiring?
It's very difficult, this question, because ethics is not the law
Yeah.
and ethics is personal. Ethics is related to your culture, sometimes with your religion, sometimes with just your childhood. It is very personal and relative. And especially in this business, as we operate globally, these things can really be relative. For example, just to give you an overview of the cultural discussions that we will have in the next year, the relationship with AI in Asia is absolutely not the same in Europe. And the BCG made a study on the appetite of AI regarding the countries. And for example, in Asia, there is a lot more of percentage of the population that is willing and would enjoy to have a chip in the brain to speak more languages, for example, and for its child.
Yeah.
In the West, it is something that is not acceptable or really a deep discussion. But there is an appetite in Asia for this. So this is the ethics. And after we have to align. And so we have at SmartRecruiters an AI and transparency committee. So we are discussing this. We are bringing some customers that are from different profiles and different functions, different industries also, to discuss. And after you have to question. And as a legal professional, you don't have to necessarily take the decision, but give all the information to the decision maker to make the best one. And so you are just questioning and try to ask the most important questions to make your decision the best. What is your relationship to the candidate? What do you want to enhance? What is a perfect world for you? This is very personal questions that you have to answer with a lot of context.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation that you were kind of looking at what was coming over in the RFPs from the customers, potential customers, in terms of regulation, ethics, compliance, all of that kind of stuff. What are you sort of hearing back from employers out there? What are the sort of big concerns of their legal teams? What does that sort of look like at the moment?
The real difficulty actually is the gray zone that we have on liability. And so everybody is stressed about being held as responsible for a bad AI output. So we are starting to build a framework on this. But for example, just to give you an example, in the US, we have a fascinating trial with Derek Mobley. Actually, in the US law, you have the employers and the employment agencies. So employer would be a customer of SmartRecruiters making the hiring decision to hire a person to do a specific job, and employment agency, as you know, Michael Page and so on. But there's no actually legal status to give a framework and to put some burden on the tech providers. And all the negotiation and all the expectation and finally all the discussions that we have with customers is about how are we defining ourselves a safe framework for me as a customer, my interest, and as a tech provider, my interest, and what is the interest of my candidates. And so we are agreeing ourselves and dealing to securitize this part.
And for employers who are watching this will seem complicated and worrying and frustrating as well. I would imagine. What would your advice be to talent acquisition leaders who are evaluating AI solutions from vendors? What kind of questions should they be asking for? What sort of red flags should they be looking for?
From a customer side, I think first the most important thing is to assure that your staff is trained on AI. Now you have in the EU Act a requirement to fulfill. Every company using AI, whatever your profile, you have to train your organization on AI, understand what is an AI output, what could be a deep fake, what could be an harmful output. And I think this is really the basis of our work to start using AI. After this, I think also a huge priority is to define your risk appetite. and your AI appetite on this, and to define your use case. And after, when you come to selecting AI vendors, then you can go deeper, and you don't have to ask if the company that you want to use its services is compliant. Compliance is not a question that can be answered by yes or no. You have to evaluate the maturity of the stakeholder that you are wanting to partner with. You have to understand what is the team behind the product that you want to acquire, because you will need collaboration on this. And in fact, there is a whole new AI supply chain, and there are new operators and actors everywhere. And we have to discuss between humans to be sure that I know this guy at this company and I trust him, and he will do the work to securitize the whole stuff, the whole deal.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think that's a really interesting perspective on it, definitely. And as a final question, and it's a really difficult question to ask someone with a who kind of works in a kind of legal framework. But where do you think we're going with this? Do you think we're likely to be seeing more regulation in the future, or as people get more comfortable with AI being everywhere, will governments kind of step back a bit from it?
Yes, absolutely. I expect more and more AI usage in the whole entire world society. Governments are starting using AI also for their own recruitment. We hear sometimes from public bodies and so on. They want also, and the governments will digitalize themselves a lot. I think asking or waiting or going to an office to get its ID will be something that will never exist again. Everybody will use AI, and we will see more regulation, and more regulation that will be stricter on the private sector and favoritizing the public services. As always, I made some public laws, and the state is always true when it goes to public law. And it is also to slow down the pace of innovation that is going absolutely crazy since 5 years in the AI world. And specifically on the recruitment, we are facing, in my honest opinion, and it's only personal, an AI arm race between candidates and companies that is completely blocking, because we have some AIs that are just talking to each other. We know that candidates are writing some resumes on ChatGPT or other AIs. We have the candidates are actually AI testers to evaluate their eventual ATS score. And so we will have more regulation to unblock the labor market that is actually quite hard in the West.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's going to be interesting for years. Thibaut, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you as well. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
My thanks to all four of my guests for being so open and honest about their challenges and their experiences building Winston. I think that we can see AI is very, very complicated, but I hope you've learned some really valuable lessons from the conversations that we've had. And I think the most important thing, if you focus on strategy and the value that it's going to bring to your organization, that's how you're going to supercharge your talent acquisition AI transformation.